Studies Section 6, Biological Beginnings of Human Development. Biological beginnings of human development. What man looked like in its early beginning on the womb, 2 weeks or less. Introduction. Advanced modern science offers the student the ability to actively engage in their thought on the interval where invisible transformation takes place between two visible phenomena, since only isolated phenomena can be found during pregnancy examinations or after miscarriages. Continuous development, as it is described in textbooks, cannot be directly observed. This is the result of an activity, an invisible transformation or metamorphosis in the interval between two visible forms. Films that show this continuous development are attempts to make the transformation graphically clear. However, it always remains invisible and can only be comprehended through the activity of thought. It is just this activity of thought that is new. It has only been possible for about 100 years, since the end of the 19th century. It assumes the modern ability to transcend with consciousness the threshold between that which can be perceived by the senses and that which is extrasensory. In this study session, you should learn about biological beginnings of human development. Learning outcomes. At the end of this study, you should be able to 1. Identify various basic stages of human development from conception to birth, and 2. Discuss those basic stages so identified. The fertilization process. Fertilization is the process in which gametes, a male sperm and a female's egg or ovum fuse together, producing a single cell that develops into an adult organism. Fertilization is a precise period in the reproductive process. It begins when the sperm contacts the outer surface of the egg, and it ends when the sperm's nucleus fuses with the egg's nucleus. Fertilization is not instantaneous. It may take up to several hours in humans. 1. Release of the egg. First, once a month between the last and next menstruation, in the middle of the menstrual cycle, a rhythmic temperature rise occurs in the mother organism. Within this warmth of ovulation, an egg cell is released along with the surrounding follicle. The last phase of egg cell maturation begins outside of the ovary. The released egg cell is received by one of the fallopian tubes and is moved further along towards the uterus by its peristaltic action. The egg cell somewhat becomes cool. In this process, spermatozoa in the semen come toward the egg cell. Their path goes from the vagina in the direction of the uterus. Sperm come from the outside from a cooler temperature and warm themselves along the way. That is the first step of fertilization, and it takes place before the two cells come into contact with each other. The undifferentiated, warm, chaotic state of the egg cell is differentiated and cooled by the sperm. Within the meeting of these two genetic streams, a warmed organism is formed. The polarities of one-sided and extreme cold and warmth are overcome. 2. Fertilization. The second step is the meeting of the gametes or reproductive cells. The egg cell is surrounded by thousands of sperm, and in this moment, a rhythmic rotation begins that lasts approximately 36 hours. A biochemical glow begins. There is still no penetration by a spermatozoon, but a light organism has formed accompanied by other and harmonious movement. This is the second step of fertilization. Now, the individuality of the child has overcome the cloudy and inert state of the egg cell and the transparent, self-powered, disordered movement state of the spermatozoa and has again developed a light movement organism out of the balance. 3. Meiosis and mitosis. The third step is what is traditionally known as actual fertilization, but is in fact the third process. A spermatozoon penetrates the egg cell and its outer membrane chemically isolates itself from the mother organism. The first immunity processes begin. The other sperms die and dissolve. The egg cell goes through its last maturing by a process of further undifferentiating and chaos, and by secretion of the so-called polar body, a concentrate of hardened cell material that is incapable of life. This organism does not glow and has no power of movement itself. The entire activity is now chemical, biological, and has relocated to the inner light organism. The organism has overcome the polarities of potential chaos. A crystal forms and buoys a chemical organism out of the balance, a new deed of the individuality. 4. Implantation. The fourth step of fertilization is implantation into the mucous membrane of the uterus that has built up in the 2 weeks after menstruation and reached a high point in its development around the time of ovulation. Without fertilization and the beginning of pregnancy, the mucous membrane would again deteriorate and the dead tissue would be expelled with the next menstruation. With the implantation, which is an activity of the child, the built-up state of the mucous membrane and the hormone situation maintains itself until birth. The morula is still inside the fallopian tube, right or left, and then goes out so that it can fall into the uterus between the 5th and 7th days after conception. After the fusion of the cell membranes, the sperm is motionless. The egg extends cytoplasmic fingers to surround the sperm and pulls it into the egg's cytoplasm. Filaments called microtubules begin to grow from the inner surface of the egg cell's membrane inward towards the cell's center, resembling spokes of a bicycle wheel growing from the rim inward towards the wheel's hub. As the microtubules grow, the sperm and egg nuclei are pushed towards the egg's center. Finally, in a process that is also poorly understood, the egg and sperm nuclear envelopes, outer membranes fuse, permitting the chromosomes from the egg and sperm to mix within a common space. A zygote is formed and development of an embryo begins. With implantation, a geographic location is chosen. A physical organism is formed that takes part in the laws of weight and lightness and the dimensions of space. Also, implantation, which is the last step of fertilization, is simultaneously the first phase of formation of the amnion. Studies Section 6 Summary. At the end of this study section, you have learned that 1. Fertilization is the process in which gametes, a male sperm, and a female's egg or ovum fuse together, producing a single cell that develops into an adult organism. Fertilization is a precise period in the reproductive process. It begins when the sperm contacts the outer surface of the egg and it ends when the sperm's nucleus fuses with the egg's nucleus. Fertilization is not instantaneous. It may take up to several hours in humans. 2. The fertilization process involves 4 stages. A. Release of the egg. B. Fertilization. C. Meiosis and mitosis. Implantation. This is the end of study section 6. Thanks for listening.